Hi everyone, my name is Jen and this is Beast House of Plants for all things houseplant and home design. Welcome back to LECA Week on my channel. So today is actually day 2 of LECA Week. If you haven't watched yesterday's video, that was the video where we talked about what is LECA, what are the pros and cons of growing your plants in LECA or passive hydroponics, what are the materials you need, and is growing your plants in LECA right for you. Today's day 2, I'm going to show you my normal process of transferring a plant from soil into LECA, and then later we'll talk about what plants I recommend and what plants I do not recommend to be transferred into passive hydroponics. So let's get into it. Okay. Welcome to our scenery change. We are currently in my bathroom. I'm going to be doing the transferring process today in my bathroom, but if you have the ability to do this outside, especially if you have a garden hose, I would recommend you do that instead, because we're going to be cleaning the LECA and the clay aggregate, and that's not great for your drainage. Also, if any of this footage looks weird from the rest of this video and the rest of the videos this week, it's probably because my camera just accidentally took a little bit of a tumble. Thankfully it fell on carpet, but there is a little bit of a crack. So far it's functioning and the footage in like the viewfinder looks okay, but I'm just hoping that after I plug into my computer, the footage still looks okay. Anyways, so this is the plant that I'm planning on transferring into LECA. This is my Scindaptus pictus Silvery Ann. I'm going to unpot it, see what the root situation looks like. She's a little leggy, so I might actually do some chopping as well. We'll see. If I end up deciding not to transfer this one and instead to do some propagation, then I'll find another plant to transfer. Like, we can always transfer a pothos or something. Okay, so the first step is actually cleaning your LECA, and you have to do this process usually about 24 hours before you decide to transfer your plant. Okay, so this is technically LECA that I've already pre-cleaned, but I'm going to clean it again to demonstrate to you what I did. I did this on a much larger scale outside. I try to clean a lot of LECA at once because cleaning LECA is kind of a process and I don't want to do it every time I repot a plant. So I took like a big nursery pot, like I think like probably like a 12 or 14 inch nursery pot with holes at the bottom, filled it about halfway-ish with LECA, and then took like a bucket, like imagine like a regular bucket, right? So those are the two things you will need. So the first thing I did was I ran a bunch of water through it, and when you do this, you're gonna notice a lot of brown clay comes out. There's a lot of brown dust within the LECA right out of the bag. So I'm gonna do this for quite a while, and then going like this to like displace it so more deposit comes out. After you do this for a while, the water is going to run clear. So after I do that, I then take my bucket and I fill it up with water, and then I place my LECA in it like that, and then I let that sit for 24 hours. Sometimes I honestly just let it go longer if I like forget about it, but at least 24 hours. Another way you can do it is that you can boil your LECA instead of soaking it overnight. I would still go outside with a garden hose to clean all of the initial clay dust off, and then put it in a pot and then boil the LECA. I think this is easier than boiling LECA, so yeah. Okay, so this is my plant. I'm going to unpot it in here to look at the root system. I'm definitely going to note that it is easier to do this when the soil is dry. Because the soil is more likely just to fall off the roots like that. The soil also fell off the roots so nicely in this circumstance because I use a really chunky soil mix. This is my normal airwood mix. So excited about that. Okay, so now we're going to clean the roots. So once again, I would really recommend that you do this part outside if you can. Normally for a plant, especially if it's a plant that was in not my soil mixture, just like a regular potting soil mix, I would use the garden hose on the jet setting. So yes, super high pressure. Okay, so this is what my roots look like post cleaning. If yours was in a heavier potting mix, yours might be stained brown, but I would make sure, especially in the area on top like this, you may have noticed when I was cleaning, I really took like my nails in there and scraped all of the dirt left to make sure there's no dirt left on there. It's okay if it's stained brown, but you really want to try to get all of the dirt left. This is like a very clean example. Really try to get as much off as possible. If you are transferring a bunch of plants from soil to LECA and you're noticing that you often get root rot right after you transfer your plant, I think one of the biggest culprits of that is not getting enough soil off of the roots when you are transferring. So what I'm gonna do is pat dry, and then I'm going to let it sit here on the counter and dry off for about an hour. So I definitely wouldn't skip the step of letting the soil dry out. I think this also helps with preventing root rot after transfer, and someone told me that this step is important because it forces the roots to take in more water right after transfer, and then it gets used to LECA quicker. So I'm just gonna leave it here and let it chill out. Okay, so while that's drying on the counter, I'm going to tell you my trick on how I grow really sensitive, tricky plants in LECA. So the hardest part of growing your plants in LECA is to get them in LECA. This transferring process is really difficult because roots that have been grown in soil are different than roots that have been grown in a medium like LECA. The roots that have been grown in LECA are much more similar to water roots than they are to soil roots. So when people talk about transferring your water propagations into soil and how that's like can be sometimes a little bit tricky, it's basically the same thing but reversed. And so with those, usually I would say that it's better to just start off with less roots that are super clean. So I'm very abrasive when I'm cleaning the roots. Like the jet setting on the garden hose is amazing for this. However, with a plant like the Maranta, if you're trying to be really difficult and really rough with their roots, a lot of times like half of it will just fall off. And so I found that the best way to do this is to actually just take a cutting and then water propagating this cutting. So obviously this has to be a plant that is able to be propagated via water. So plants that have to be divided, like a lot of calatheas have to be divided, that wouldn't work necessarily well with this trick. But Marantas, Tradescantias, anything with like really fine root system that you want to grow in LECA, it is better to just completely start over with the root system, water propping it so that you get, only water roots and then transferring those into LECA. And the reason I'm water propping first instead of trying to propagate in LECA is because LECA is a much drier medium, and a lot of those plants are really sensitive to underwatering, so they might not take too well to such a dry environment like LECA immediately versus once they've already has some established roots. So yeah. Okay, so it hasn't been quite an hour yet. Do as I say, not as I do. But I'm gonna go ahead and just put it in LECA anyways. So with this cutting, it's quite leggy, as you can see right here. It is quite leggy, so I'm actually going to chop it to make a couple of cuttings, and then I'm actually going to just put the cuttings directly into LECA. In my experience, Scindapsus don't water propagate well. Usually I propagate them via soil propagation, just sticking them straight into soil. I'm gonna be honest that I have never propagated these in LECA before, but I feel like it'll work. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to leave quite a few nodes. Okay, let's change the camera angle. Okay, so this section is fine. This is the only section I'm going to cut just because it's so leggy. So I'm going to leave quite a few nodes for it to be able to come out of. And then I'm going to cut probably like, let's do right here. And then I'm also going to take one more cutting by cutting right here. Alright, so let's pot this plant up. So this is a 4-inch nursery pot with holes at the bottom. And we're just going to pot this up like how you would pot a plant in soil. Okay, I put LECA in about 1/3 of the way. Okay, just trying to hold. All of my cuttings together. Just plop this in, and then we're gonna back off. Okay, so my camera died, so I had to change out the battery, but you saw me putting in the LECA, and this is what it looks like. So you just pot it up like how you pot things in soil. Okay, so now I have, this is tap water. However, once again, if you are just starting out, I would recommend you start with filtered water, because depending on where you live, you might not be able to use tap water depending on what they sterilize your water with. So this is tap water plus 1 literal drop of Super Thrive, and then I pH'd it. So for this container with my tap water, I have to use about 10 drops of pH down. That is going to depend on your water, what water you're using, where you live, etc. So you just pH the water, and then I just pour it in. So at the very top, pour it in. To about there, which is maybe a little bit more. Okay. To about there. This is the 1/3 line of the container, and the reason we want it at the 1/3 line is because remember when we potted it up, when we put in the LECA, we put about a 1/3 layer of LECA in before we put in the roots of the plant. So when you put in a 1/3 of the water like this, all of the roots are sitting above the water line, and it's really important that all of your pre-existing roots, when you are potting it up, are above the water line, because that prevents it from rotting. Because this is water that's sitting still, it is stagnant water, so that can cause a lot of root rot. So you want to make sure it's a third and it's below where all of the roots are. I can't really remember if I mentioned Super Thrive earlier, but so I'm going to talk about it now. So Super Thrive is a plant vitamin and it's a plant hormone, and it was created to help with root development and transplant shock. Obviously, when we are transferring your plant from soil to LECA, this is an ideal time to use Super Thrive. I mix it according to the instructions on the back, which for about a cup of water is a drop, a literal drop. So in about a week, hopefully it will have used all of the water that's already in this container. So then I will flush the plant and then use, because I don't want to mix up new nutrients just for this plant, so I'm going to use pre-mixed nutrients that I'm using with all my other plants, and then diluting it further to about half strength for this plant. So hopefully it does well in LECA. Hopefully all of the cuttings that I put in root up. I've done this before with like pothos, because pothos are so easy to root. I've never done it with the scindapsus, so I hope it works. Guys, look, my brother brought me popcorn. Okay, so a question I usually get is, okay, so now I've transferred my plant and it's getting quite established in LECA, and now my roots are growing quite rapidly below the 1/3 line. Do I have to repot it? And the general answer is no, you don't have to repot immediately. This is because any new root growth, those are roots that have been grown in LECA, so therefore they are used to the water and used to the medium LECA. I would just be careful to keep any established soil roots above the water line. Because the plant is sitting in a reservoir of water, they're all going to want to grow down into where the water is. So it's not going to be a root bound, it's just going to go immediately straight down. This is totally fine. I usually repot my plants once a quarter ish, like once every like 3 or 4 months. Sometimes if a plant I know is like a chill plant, like I have a syngonium right here, that's a super chill plant. So I think it's been like 6 months. There are a lot of roots coming out the bottom and I have yet to repot that plant, and it's doing totally fine. Eventually you do want to get around to it, just to mitigate the chances of root rot, because once again the roots are sitting in stagnant water, so there is a chance of root rot. But honestly, I haven't really had like a big issue with it. The only time I've ever gotten root rot in LECA is one, when the plant already had root rot prior to me putting it in LECA, and two, I think I didn't clean the roots well enough in this one plant. I got like lazy with it, and those are the only 2 times that I've ever gotten root rot in LECA. I've never gotten root rot just from a plant sitting in water. Okay, so still on this topic, so every time I repot, I'm not necessarily upsizing. I feel like LECA plants also can be more compacted into a plant pot than soil plants. So I'm just, recompacting the root ball so it sits above the soil line when I repot. And I do this until the root ball can't fit in the pot anymore, then I upsize. I know that a lot of people, especially people who have been growing their plants in LECA or agriculture for a long time, they sometimes trim their roots just because the roots grow so fast, and you only have so much space to accommodate the amount of plants that you have. I've never had to do this. It kind of hurts my soul a little bit to cut healthy roots, so I've never done it. I've never really had a problem with like so much root that I can't just like upsize. So yeah, definitely haven't had that issue yet. I will probably get back to you in like a year to see if my thoughts on that have changed. Okay, so now let's talk about the topic that I'm sure you're all waiting for, which is which plants I recommend you put in LECA and which plants I do not recommend you put in LECA. Here's the thing, I only own so many plants, so if you ask me like a very specific question like, can I put my Anthurium veitchii into LECA? I'm not going to know the answer to that because I don't have one and I don't have any experience doing that. However, generally, there are more plants that you can grow in LECA than there are not. pretty much every single plant out there I've seen someone grow in LECA. Some do better than others, so we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Here's the thing, like, transferring your plants to LECA is absolutely a risk, but it's also only one component of plant care. So although, you know, I really like my philodendron splendid in LECA, I think it's doing freaking amazing, just because, like, if you're having a problem with your philodendron splendid in LECA, it might not necessarily be the medium LECA itself, because remember, just because we have the same medium doesn't mean that all of our other external, you know, conditions are the same as well. You know, we still have to consider lighting, humidity, watering schedule, not really watering schedule, but lighting, humidity, what nutrients you're giving it, etc., etc. What was the condition of the plant before you transferred it to LECA? How old is the plant, things like that. Okay, so in very, very general terms, the plants that you're going to have the easiest time transferring into LECA are the ones with nice thick roots. So like most aroids, syngoniums, philodendrons, monsteras, all have really, really nice thick roots, so they are going to be the easiest for you to transfer. They do really, really well in LECA. I've seen a ton of people do all different kinds of philodendrons and monsteras and syngoniums in LECA. I have a bunch of philodendrons in LECA. My philodendron Jose Bueno just put out this awesome new leaf, which I'm really excited about. I think the next time that I have to repot my Monstera Thai constellation, I'm likely also going to transfer it to LECA, but it's doing fine right now, so I don't want to mess with it, so I'm going to wait until probably spring 2021 when it needs a repot to do that. A lot of times I won't transfer a plant into LECA just for the sake of transferring a plant into LECA. I usually wait until it needs to be repotted before I transfer it. So if you are curious about whether or not a plant can be grown in LECA, you should try it, because more likely than not it can be. I know that my Clean Leaves grows a ton of cactuses in LECA, which is not something I expected to work, but it did work. I know Minimalist Callie is currently growing her Codex plant in LECA, which is also something I did not expect to work. That is working. So let's talk about the plants that I do not recommend you transfer into LECA. So the first is any string of things, like string of hearts, string of pearls, string of dolphins. Do not recommend you transfer this to LECA. I did try a strand of my variegated string of hearts into LECA and it did not do well. It like rapidly declined within like 2 days, and that's because their root system is so fine. But there are other plants with fine root systems that do okay. The difference is that for the string of things, their root system is incredibly shallow, so it's really only in like the top inch or 2 inch of the LECA, which unfortunately is the part that dries out very, very quickly. Usually the top inch or 2 dries out within like a day or two, which is where the entire root system is. So definitely do not recommend you put any string of things into LECA. I'm also going to recommend that you not put any crawling or creeping plants into LECA. So for example, the Philodendron gloriosum, it's a crawling plant, so the stem has to be exposed on the top. The Rhaphidophora decursiva is a crawling plant. I believe I think it's the Pastazanum, that's also a crawling plant. I might be confusing the Pastazanum and the Plambanii. I don't know, maybe both of them are crawling plants. I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head, but make sure to check whether or not your philodendrons are climbing philodendrons or crawling philodendrons. And the reason I would not recommend that you put any crawling philodendrons into LECA is because LECA is such a light medium that the plant will just flop over. Not saying it can't be done, because I have seen people grow Philodendron gloriosums in LECA. I just don't think it works that great. I did try to transfer it into LECA once, and I took it out pretty much like immediately because I couldn't get it to stay. So yeah, I definitely wouldn't recommend that. I do eventually in my collection want to go 100% soil free, so I am going to look into other soil free alternatives for crawling philodendrons. I've seen a ton of people grow their gloriosums in lechuza pond, so that's another option to look into. So yeah, like I would really just encourage you to experiment. I've experimented with a ton of my collection. My jewel orchids are in LECA. My Ludicea discolor, a section of it is in LECA and a section of it is in soil, and the section in LECA is doing better than the section that is in soil. So I would definitely highly recommend that you experiment with LECA. I like it a lot. So I've definitely rambled on so much, so I am going to stop now. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. We still have 3 more videos this week, so tomorrow we're going to talk about nutrients, what kinds of nutrients I use, how to mix it, and what my normal schedule is like. And then on Thursday we're going to talk about flush days and plant maintenance in LECA. And then on Friday I'm going to give you an update on every single plant that I have in LECA. Alright, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like it, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye!